Welcome, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started in just a moment here. Going to give just another minute or two for any stragglers to join us, and we'll go ahead and get the ball rolling here. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome to another installment of our summer webinar series here. Today, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, specifically remote security, and how detect and respond can really assist with the vast majority of the security risks that are out there, especially in a remote environment. Want to go over a couple of housekeeping items here. Few things. First of all, there are microphones are muted. We'll be handling questions via the chat pane. You'll be able to post a question there in chat, and I will review those at the end of the webinar and do my best to answer as many as I possibly can. I do also reserve time after every webinar. Please reach out to me. My phone number and email address are in the last slide, and I would be happy to discuss a specific circumstance with you or something that you'd like me to elaborate on that was a bit much for the Q&A. We are recording this, so we will be posting this to our resource center probably within 24 hours or so after the completion of the webinar. So it'll be there for if you'd like to rewatch, you'd like to share with any colleagues or coworkers, or just as a refresher. It will be there. And also another note, this is a live demo. I will be bouncing around a little bit. I've got PowerPoint, and I've got actually a video that we'll get into later on in the webinar that actually shows detect and respond and how it functions. And we'll go through that here. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to go through and talk briefly about what we'll cover today. One of the big things is I'm going to take the opportunity for at least the first half of the webinar, and I really want to go through and touch on some best practices, some things that can be done. This is not going to be strictly on detect and respond because unfortunately, there is no one magic bullet. There's no one thing that a company can do that gives them 100% protection against all cyber threats. It's very, very much a defense in layers. You know, one thing, one practice or training or awareness campaign or piece of software may take care of part of the threat, but there's no one thing that takes care of all of it. I mean, even our full live security monitoring package, now it is one thing, but really behind it is a number of layers, a number of things that defend our customers, a number of things that help protect them, because there's no one item we can deploy that takes care of everything. So half of this is going to be review. I had a webinar back in April. That was, right after the COVID crisis hit and everybody was working from home. We only had a few people on, and I wanted to take some time to review some of the highlights from that on remote security. Go over some things that everybody can do. You know, each individual has a hand in the security and the security of your company, the security practices of your company. Then we'll talk about some things that need to come from the top, or at least IT, and then we'll dive into detect and respond. I'm actually going to show a video of us executing the detect and respond ransomware in a sandboxed environment against a machine that was prepared specifically, spun up specifically so we could run it and trash it and not have to worry about any repercussions. And we'll show how it works, what happens, how the threat can be remediated, and I'll go through and kind of provide a voiceover as that video plays. So that's kind of the agenda and how we're going to be going through this. And we're not necessarily going to go completely in order here, but again, I really want to make sure I take some time to go through some of the best practices, some of the awareness things that you as an individual can do to ensure that you're doing your part to help protect your company and your company's data. So with that, we'll dive in. So I think everybody's aware. I mean, data is everywhere. I know that Now, a lot of us have started to subscribe to the Microsoft 365, Office 365 suite, and we're starting to consolidate our data in SharePoint and Teams and OneDrive and things of that nature, but we still have data all over the place. We may very well have some kind of CRM that doesn't fully integrate with the Microsoft stack. I'm sure that there's some accounting software that you're using that doesn't fully integrate with the Microsoft stack. So there's data all over the place. And depending on how far along the journey you are with the Microsoft 365 or Office 365 stack, you could have things in private data centers, stored on servers, on file shares, stored locally on your computer. Things are all over the place. And so it's a matter of, how do you make sure to protect all of these pieces in all of these places? So with that, unfortunately, the criminals are everywhere. And with this massive work from home experiment that we were all forced into, the threat landscape has never been wider or more vast, as now we don't have just corporate networks to be concerned about. We've got a disparate number of home internet connections that are reaching into these corporate networks to try to access data. That gives a much wider and broader attack vector for these cyber criminals, in that they can try to compromise individuals' home computers and home networks that may not have the protections in place that the corporate networks have. So unfortunately, these stay-at-home orders and this work-from-home environment when you're in only benefits these cyber criminals. So cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. First of all, why does it matter? I mean, certainly there's a substantial cost associated with this. Loss of data, loss of information, can negatively impact the company's brand and reputation. I mean, can you imagine, I'm sure everybody's seen the big news articles with these major companies being breached. And if you were one of their customers, you may not be willing to trust them quite as much with your information as you used to. And certainly you could also lose your competitive advantage if, your secret sauce, what makes you special and unique, is stored within your company data. And if someone else gets access to it, well, they may be able to compromise that secret sauce, that special special thing that you do that makes you very competitive. More than anything, that's the company. Now, why does it matter to you as an individual? There's only, aside from yourself, there's probably only one other entity that has more information about you as an individual, and that's your employer. They have your social security number, they have your address, they have a lot of information about you. So in helping protect your corporate, apply your corporate cybersecurity policies, you're indeed, in fact, protecting yourself as well. Because if your company's data is compromised, more than likely, your data is compromised also. There's information about you that's now out there. So, certainly need to have layers of protection, layers of defense against that compromise. And certainly PII, personal identifiable information, and PHI, personal protected health information, are two of the most critical things to protect. So in this next slide, as you see, we've got our very different data types. But again, we've got employee data, we have customer data, we've got operational data, and our intellectual property, our trade secrets, our special sauce. All of these things, each one individually, is worth protecting. All of this together, it's critical that you protect these things. So with that, what can you do? First and foremost, make sure your PCs are patched, they're up to date. Make sure your Windows updates are installed. Make sure you've got antivirus, anti-malware software, and endpoint protection, which we'll get to with our detect and respond demo here in a little while. That's a critical piece to this. If you happen to have to be working on your personal device because of the circumstances of working from home or what have you, see if there's a license available of your corporate antivirus that you might be able to get from IT and install on your home device. Again, that all comes down to your individual company's policies, but that may very well be something that you could do to at least beef up that part of the security on your home computer while you're using it for work. So you can use the two tools that are available to you. I mean, certainly if you can, wire into your home network, plug in instead of connecting over the Wi-Fi. That Wi-Fi signal is blasted out in a range, and anybody within that range can jump on that Wi-Fi if they can somehow circumvent your password. And honestly, home routers and their protections for passwords are not the most robust thing in the world. So, home routers are certainly far more easily compromised than your corporate IT controlled wireless deployment. So certainly if you have the opportunity to plug in, please do so. And, honestly, as a side note, it's tremendously faster. You'll get a much snappier connection if you're able to plug in. Certainly for your remote access, talk to your IT department for their preferences, for their requirements on, what's the best way to remotely access the corporate data. You might use VPN, remote LogMeIn, remote desktop. So again, just talk to your IT department. You probably already have this figured out, but ensure that there's some secure way that you're accessing your corporate data. You're not just going in over the public internet without some kind of VPN protocol in front of it. This is the key. I can't stress this enough. Please, please, please set up multi-factor authentication where you have to type in your password and then use an authenticator app on your phone to approve your login or type in a code. I know it's a pain. I know it can add a few extra seconds to a login, but this stops 98% of attempts to access your credentials, because they've got your username, they've got your password, but they don't have your MFA token. They still can't get in. And in general, most of the time, even if they've accessed your credentials, these cyber criminals out there are looking for the low-hanging fruit. They're not looking to put a ton of time and effort into compromising you. They're trying to compromise as many people as possible. So they're looking to log in, and if the login triggers an MFA event, in general, they just give up and move on to the next one because there are easier fish to fry. There is a lower hanging fruit to go out there with it doesn't have multi-factor authentication turned on. It's built into the vast majority of the things that you sign in. You can work with your IT department to ensure that those are turned on for you. Again, I can't stress this enough. This deters far more cyber criminals than just about anything else you can do. Now, make sure that you are aware of your company's acceptable use policy, and please, by all means, follow it. If there's something within your company's acceptable use policy that's causing you to suffer productivity loss, I would suggest addressing it through the appropriate mechanisms within your company. Bring it up to your manager, bring it up to IT. I can't do my job because of this. Please help me find a better way. And they may very well be able to find a better or more secure way for you to access things while still following the policy and still able to get your job done. As I mentioned earlier, endpoint protection. It's another layer of defense. We'll go into this in more detail here later in the webinar, but endpoint protection is an excellent source for those times that somebody makes a mistake. There's your safety net. And then understand how your data is backed up. Not necessarily just assume that it's being backed up, but understand from your IT department what folders and files on your system are indeed being backed up, and ensure that you're storing your critical data there. If you don't understand or don't know the backup policies and procedures, it's very hard for you to ensure that you're saving files in a place that you're comfortable are going to be backed up. So ask those questions. Make sure that you are indeed storing files in a place that does have some kind of backup associated with it. So if something is to happen to it, you still have access to those critical files. So now, this is going on. This has been rampant since the work from home. Social engineering. Unfortunately, people are the weakest link in any company's cybersecurity posture. We could lock things down and provide a 100% cybersecurity guarantee for our customers as long as they didn't have any users that needed to log in or access any of the data on their network. Now, that's completely useless for a company because that's the whole point, is getting secure access for their staff and for their employees to continue to do their job. But the only way to lock it down is to take people out of the mix. And so since we as people are going to be involved, we need to be aware. We need to not be helpful, because unfortunately, we are helpful people. People are in general curious. The technical exploits, writing code to compromise a firewall, it's time consuming, it's complicated. It's something that takes a certain level of skill to be able to understand how this firewall works and write code to circumvent its protections. It's a lot easier to talk to somebody and talk them into giving you information that they shouldn't be giving you. So that's why social engineering is becoming so rampant. One of the common ones is pretexting. It's social engineering through impersonation. it can be done in person or any communication, via phone, text message, email. They also can be very difficult to identify. I mean, I know that our security services team will do do some pretexting as part of a security risk assessment, just to see how helpful the staff are, and what the security levels are. I know that there's one story that they tell where they had a shirt embroidered with AT&T and walked into an office and said they were with the phone company, had a laptop in their hand, and they were shown directly into the server room because it was just assumed that they were with AT&T and needed to lay hands on the phone lines. My guys could have done horrible things to the equipment in there because they were just, they were invited in after misidentifying themselves. So again, this is something that, we need to at least be wary of. Another big one is executive impersonation, phone call or an email impersonating an executive, talking about something that needs to happen right now. I need this for this contest, and we have some winners, and I need you to order me 50 Visa gift cards. That's a big red flag. If you get these kind of requests, confirm it on your own. Contact that executive on your own through a known source and confirm that they really did make that request of you. Another big impersonation is IT. Somebody will call and impersonate your IT department and ask you to do things. And in general, most people, again, want to be helpful. This is something where, again, confirming the identity of who is calling you. Reach out to IT at the number rings IT and make sure that it really is the person. I mean, in general, IT might be a little grouchy about it, but in general, they're going to be thankful that you were cognizant enough to reach out to them instead of just randomly giving out your credentials to somebody who may or may not have been, actually part of your IT department. At the end of the day, when it comes to security and access, don't be helpful. Don't volunteer information, and then confirm the identity of the person you're providing the information with by contacting them through known good means. So again, just, put that skeptical hat on. And, when you get something that comes in that just doesn't look right, it might not be right. So just keep that in mind. Another big one that we've seen a huge increase in of late has been phishing emails. A fraudulent email disguised as legitimate that comes in and asks you to do something. Some of the big commonalities are they try to establish familiarity with you and your organization, like that they've done business with you in the past and they are who they say they are, which means they're not who they are. They may come across with authority. Again, that executive impersonation, I'm your boss, I need you to do this. And there's almost always some sense of urgency. This has to be done within X amount of time. Those are some of the common factors, but unfortunately, phishing emails are as good as the person writing them. And some of these people are getting real good and being very creative in the creation of these. So we're going to go into a few things here, a few things you can look for and identify. This is another reason why, as the complexity of these increases and as the cyber criminals get better and better at this is another reason for an endpoint protection, because a lot of the things that come in via email are either one, credential harvesters, or two, malware or ransomware. And the detect and respond certainly can stop malware and ransomware in its tracks, often before you even have the opportunity to try to run it. Again, we'll show that in the video here in a little while. So that's a very nice safety net for a lot of the things that come in via a phishing email. So some of the things to look for: if the greeting is very generic, if the sender address is incorrect, the two fields, the recipient field is incorrect, you got some suspicious links, links that don't match their hover. If you hover your mouse over a link, it will display where that link is going to take you. And if it doesn't match where it says it's going to take you, this is probably a fraudulent email. They'll often have familiar brand association. They sometimes will have attachments that are suspicious, or again, that unreasonable sense of urgency. Open this attachment within the next 24 hours. And there will often be spelling and grammatical errors. A lot of these malicious actors do not live or reside in the United States. And that is one of the biggest benefits to us, in that the spelling and grammar is sometimes a little off. And that's definitely a big red flag, something to look for. If spelling and grammar is off, it's something that is a huge huge tell as far as these phishing emails. So we're going to go into a couple of examples here. You can see, a few things here in this email. I'm just going to kind of let everybody just kind of look this over, but we've got B. Willis instead of Bill, or Dear Mr. Willis. That looks like a truncated username to me. Obviously the email address is MS Online Service Team dot a bunch of characters at email.microsoftonlineteam.com. That's looks a little fishy there. So we'll go into, we've got this generic greeting. We have a suspicious address here, and then this link is suspicious. We'll get into the hover here on the next slide. As you see, you can hover over this link and you see this random address, which has absolutely nothing to do with Microsoft. So this again is, with that hover, is a pretty obvious. This is some kind of malicious link, and hence this email should just be completely discarded. Another piece is, this is regarding the Office 365 team. And then a couple of other big pieces here. You won't be able to use your email. Just follow instruction below to confirm your account. So again, we've got some grammatical errors here. We've got some urgency. We've got this bad thing that's going to happen to you unless you do this. This is one where if you wanted to, you really thought this might be legitimate, which honestly you really shouldn't, but if you do, then I would go on your own to the Office portal, portal.office.com, navigate to that in your browser, and see if you really do need to change a password, or if you do have access to your email. Do not do it through an email. Another safe way of doing this is, if it's coming from a place that looks familiar to you, navigate to that place on your own. Don't click the link, go to their webpage on your own. And that's another way to confirm the legitimacy. So a couple of other things to ask, was I expecting the email? Was I expecting an email with attachments and links in it? Again, alternative access options, browse to the website instead. You review those things for authenticity, and review it to see if it's free of phishing clues. These are all things that you can do and just look over to be assured that indeed this is a legitimate email that should have been sent to me, and this attachment is safe, and I should be opening it because I'm expecting it. So again, it's just more than anything, stop and think before you randomly just start opening email. Some other pieces, data security. Certainly some things to be wary of, some things that you should make sure you're doing. Be wary of any of these emails that come in for paid products or services for free. Click here for a free iPad. You are not going to get an free iPad for clicking on this link. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. So, these are becoming, a little more sophisticated, but they're no less common than they have been in the past. Again, ensure your Windows updates are completed, and the firewall on your computer is enabled. Make sure you're using a quality antivirus. Make sure it's scanning regularly and updated. Avoid these registry cleaners, PC tuners, speed enhancement software. In general, those are borderline malware to begin with, and they really don't have a whole lot of benefit for you. If you're running into slowdowns or you need more oomph, work with your IT department. It might be something going on with the machine. It might be old. It might not meet your use case any longer. There are a lot of other things that IT can do to help clean things up without resorting to these third-party tools / malware. Certainly don't use any website or software that offers copyrighted materials for free. I think that should be a given, but there are a lot of them out there. Certainly enabling some content filtering. You can enable OpenDNS for some basic content filtering, so that if you do click on a link that is taking you to a place you shouldn't go, maybe the content will be flagged and you will not be allowed to go to that link. It's again another layer of defense. And then you certainly can close any pop-ups that come up from the taskbar down here on the bottom of the screen, not from the X. Sometimes criminals will actually obfuscate the install button behind the X to close out the window. And so by clicking the X, you've actually clicked OK to install. So something to be aware of. Close them down. Right click on the icon down on your toolbar, and close them that way. Don't ever provide access to your machine from an unsolicited technical support representative. If you need technical support, call your company's IT or your IT provider, and while they're on the phone, they will then probably use a remote access tool that's already installed to access your machine. If you get a call from some guy who says he's a Microsoft technician and he needs to access your computer, he is not a Microsoft technician, and he is not, the only thing he's accessing your computer for is nefarious purposes. And then certainly never save sensitive company data to your personal computer. Make sure you're saving those to folders, file shares, OneDrive, things of that nature that are backed up and that are controlled by the corporate policies. You do not want them sitting on the desktop of your home PC. That is not a safe place for sensitive company data to reside. So with that, we've gone through the review section of this, and now I want to dive into endpoint protection. So we call it detect and respond. Now let's go into briefly what is it and how does it work. It is a software suite that's installed on the machine for the distinct purpose of detecting and responding to ransom and malware. Now, it does not pull from a list of known ransomwares and malwares and check to see if this is something that it's supposed to deal with. It actually looks for the characteristics and the activities of ransomware and malware and stops those activities from happening. Most ransomware, once it's executed, will then reach out to a command and control server somewhere and download its instructions, as well as its encryption key to start encrypting your files in your computer. Our detect and respond solution identifies that reach out to the command and control and blocks it. So it never can get its instructions. It never can get its encryption key. And so the encryption of your software doesn't happen, or your files doesn't happen. So it does a tremendous job of halting some of the highest risk items within that are out there right now. Because these ransomwares and malwares, with these very, very sophisticated phishing campaigns. I've seen some very legitimate phishing campaigns that go out to HR with Word docs that are labeled somebody's resume that have a malware or ransomware embedded. I can't really argue with the HR person who opened the document that was sent in as a response to a job posting that included a resume. It's their job. It's what they do. Their job is to review resumes. I cannot fault that person for opening an infected document because they had no idea of knowing, and it's part of what they do on a day in, day out basis. That's where endpoint protection and detect and respond come in, because in that instance, detect and respond kicks in and stops that malicious document from doing what it was written to do, i.e. encrypting all of the data on that computer, dropping a ransom note, and trying to extract Bitcoin from the company to unencrypt the files. You can't hold the HR person responsible for doing their job. This is there as they backup, as the safety net to help bail them out. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pop over and I'm going to go ahead and show a video here. As I mentioned, we have run this, we have set this up as this is a sandboxed environment with some files that we have saved. This is a virtual computer that we created specifically to show what happens when you try to run malware on a system with detect and respond. So a couple of caveats to this. First and foremost, we installed detect and respond on this machine and then tried to download this ransomware. Detect and respond immediately kicked in and stopped it. Wouldn't even let us download the file because it recognized it. By the way, this is the quote unquote mail-to ransomware. So in order to do this demo, we took detect and respond and turned off respond. So this is in detect only mode right now. So it's going to tell us what's happening, but it's not going to try to stop it. Once the ransomware has run, we will then switch over to the back end of detect and respond, and we will show the security engineer engaging the response portion of detect and respond and remediating the encryption of all of these files. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and click play here. And then, as I said, I will talk over this and we'll probably bounce around, fast forward a little bit because this can be a little slow. So with that, so here is the mail-to ransomware. We've just As I say, it's in our downloads folder. We downloaded this file. And here, very shortly, there we go. So there's the security engineer trying to run the file, and he just ran it. And you see here, immediately, our Sentinel-1 detect and respond software kicks up. Threat detected. You cannot miss this if this pops up on your computer. Now, again, more than likely, any one of our customers would never have seen this because the detect and respond would have stepped in on the download of this software before we even got to the opportunity to execute it. But in this case, we turned off the response, so we were able to execute this, and even so, it detected the threat immediately. So now the engineer is going to go ahead and go over to the task manager, and we're going to watch here as this file starts to run. He's going to look at all the processes, make this a little bigger for us. And then the big key is we're going to watch our CPU and memory here. In the next few seconds, we'll see this performance start to really spike. Yeah, there's our utilization. All of a sudden now, this ransomware has run and it is starting to encrypt software. And it's using every ounce of the CPU's capability to encrypt these pieces of software. And you also see here, it dropped the ransom note. So this shows this is the note with the instructions on where to send your Bitcoin to get your decryption key. So here, you can see the CPU still pegged. And you can see they've added file extensions and then drop the ransom note. And here in just a moment, he'll open the ransom note. When we try to open these files, can't open this type of file. These files are thoroughly and completely unavailable to us. I'm going to pause the video here for just a minute. This is very common with ransomware. They'll drop a little README file in Notepad, and you can see they'll tell you that your files are being encrypted, and then they will list for you an email address and a quantity of Bitcoin, along with often instructions on how to acquire Bitcoin if you're not familiar with that. And they'll also threaten that there's no way anybody else can decrypt it, and if you have somebody else try to do this, your data will be impossible to recover. They won't even be able to help you. The big thing with all of this is, at the end of the day, we never recommend paying a ransom because you're making a deal with a criminal. There is absolutely no guarantee that this person is going to send you a decryption key or that decryption key is going to work. Now, some of these people, they're in it just for the money. As soon as they get the money, they're happy to give you the decryption key so you can have your data back. So now this is the back end. This is the detect and respond software from the security operations center perspective. So he clicked on the file that ran, and you can see that it's been labeled with a high risk level or medium high risk level. Let's go back here. We've got a medium high risk level. It shows some information about the ransomware, what device, and the file name. And again, some links to actually some of the industry standard websites like VirusTotal that shows some of the information about what that ransomware is known to do. So again, here's the other piece. And then it gets into the raw data report here. And as this loads, he'll show some of the threat vectors and some of the attack vector. And it gives you a full storyline attack overview, what files were encrypted. Now he's going to take us here to VirusTotal. And this will show us all of the nefarious things that this particular package dropped on the machine. I believe we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 57 different pieces of ransomware or different malicious pieces of code were dropped as part of that one install. So another piece about this is even if you do pay the Bitcoin and get the decryption key, there's no guarantee that there's not some of these sitting around still gathering information, looking for ways to compromise you. So this shows the files that were encrypted, what they were renamed, basically gives a timeline of what the ransomware did. Shows the registry edits that they made, the processes that it ran. There's a tremendous amount of granularity that's available to the security engineers. And again, this shows kind of the vector of the attack. Started with the file, went out to VSS admin, explorer.exe. In general, most of these are looking for a shadow copy or a standard backup copy of files. They're specifically looking for those to either delete or encrypt them, so that even if there is some kind of backup, they also get it to encrypt the backup so that you don't have the opportunity to restore. Now, detect and respond does, there's the delete shadows there. Detect and respond does rely on some shadow copy like processes, but it does a phenomenal job of obfuscating those backups so that the ransomware doesn't hit on those as backups and hence does not look to encrypt them. So again, he's just showing us all the various things that happen, and it just gives us kind of an overview of what happened, what files were affected, what registry and process entries. Again, a lot of information here. So now he goes and he's now going to go and remediate this infection. So I believe if you noticed here briefly, did a very quick job of it here. So we're going to go back just a moment. He comes up and clicks the remediate button. And then that will start the overwrite of these encrypted files with their secured backups. So we're going to watch our CPU utilization jump up a little bit here, but nothing any tremendous. Okay. Oh, there you go. It didn't actually take. Okay, so now he's actually going to go in and do the remediation. So now he will remediate everything that file, and then roll everything back to just before that file was executed. And he's going to mark this as resolved because he's very confident that this will indeed decrypt all of the files. And you can see CPU's spiked up a little bit here in the 20% range down from the 2 to 3%. Notice the ransomware node is now gone. And here in just another moment or two, these files will revert back to their standard Excel and Word formats and be viewable, readable files again. So you see now we're back to Excel files, back to Word docs, and the infection has been removed and the machine restored to the state just prior to running that piece of ransomware. So again, some of that is very technical, but again, it was just an opportunity to see a piece of ransomware in action without the nasty repercussions. So I know that we often don't get the opportunity to see that other than on a really, really, really bad day. And so I wanted to make sure that we could show, what would happen if you execute some ransomware and what detect and respond does to remediate that. Again, it's completely backed by ASK's Enhanced Security Services Division, a 24/7, 365 security operations center, security engineers with eyes on glass to help respond to these sort of incidents. So just to kind of pull everything back together and recap, cybersecurity is everybody's job. Really comes down to every single person in an organization needs to at least be cognizant of the fact that cybersecurity is a threat, there are risks, and that they need to be aware of the things that they can do to help. Cyber criminals are targeting personnel, especially personnel in roles that have access to information that they may be interested in. Accounting and HR. Accounting's always been a target because that's where the money is. HR is a big target now because that's where the data is. That's where all of that personally identifiable information is kept. And a lot of these people are just looking for that. They're going to put it together in a list, and they're going to put it with other breaches that they've been able to successfully pull off, and then sell those lists on the dark web to anybody who may want to use them. So it might not even be the person gathering the data that's going to do nefarious things to you. It just gets your data out there for other cyber criminals to take and use to do bad things. So certainly be aware of impersonation attempts. Phishing and spear phishing emails are very, very common attacks, and they're becoming more and more common, especially with the scattered remote workforces where a lot of us are in right now. Those phishing emails normally contain clues, know what to look for. Certainly, changing your behavior is better than just looking for clues. How you approach looking at an email. Don't be in a rush. Don't be, at 5:02 p.m. when you're trying to end your workday is not the day to be trying to consider whether you should or shouldn't respond to or open an attachment or an email that's a little questionable. Put it aside. Look at it in the morning. Certainly, ensure your passwords are strong and complex. Make sure you don't use any kind of linkable information in your passwords. And don't reuse passwords, especially between work and personal. Keep your passwords for personal and your passwords from work completely unique, completely separate. And then protect your data. Ensure your data is protected through backup, through cybersecurity protections such as detect and respond. There are plenty of ways to make sure your data is protected. Make sure you understand which ones are in place for you and what your part is to making sure your data is in the right place to get backed up and protected. So with that, your role, be vigilant and consistent. Email, passwords, interactions. When in doubt, ask. Talk to your IT, talk to your manager, talk to us, somebody. Mistakes are an accident. People make mistakes, it happens. But keeping quiet is not. Tell somebody, hey, I think I clicked on a bad link. It didn't really do anything, but I'm worried. Take a look at it, please. Let somebody who has more cybersecurity knowledge than you investigate that to see if there really is a threat or not. Make sure you keep in touch with your manager, or again, call ASK. Again, this is one of those where often people will criminals will access an organization and they'll be there for months, biding their time, looking for the best way to compromise that organization, looking for the best time to strike. So if you click on something, and even if something bad doesn't happen, report it, please. I would much rather have a false report that really truly indeed was nothing, rather than somebody keeping quiet about an incident that could have prevented a much larger problem. So with that, I will go ahead and open up the floor to questions here. I'll go ahead and look at the Q&A, although actually here, let me, first of all, please, the next one is 2 weeks from now. We'll be doing Microsoft 365 tools you didn't know you had. There is a very large, complete suite of software that the vast majority of us use only a small percentage of. And so we'll be going through some of the tools that are available that most people just don't have in their normal wheelhouse, in their normal day-to-day routines, and just kind of going over where those could benefit you, and kind of try to educate a little bit, and maybe I can help you find a tool or two that you're already paying for in the Microsoft 365 stack that you're not using. So with that, I'll open the floor to questions. I'll leave this slide up for a few minutes. This is my direct line. This extension will ring to my cell. It's my email address. Please reach out to me with any specific questions or concerns that you may have regarding detect and respond, cybersecurity in general, best practices, what have you. So, well, with that, I'm looking at the Q&A here, and I either put everybody to sleep or I did an absolutely phenomenal job of explaining this, because I have 0 questions in the Q&A. So I'll go ahead and hang out here for another minute or so and ramble on for just a moment. But certainly, if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A. If not, my email address is here, my phone number is here. Again, I reserve some time after this for calls. If anybody would like to just reach out to me about a company-specific question, be happy to do my best to answer it, or if nothing else, to bring in the appropriate party that can indeed answer that question. So, well, I don't see any questions here incrementing, so I'll go ahead and chalk it up to I did a great job. I really hope everybody enjoyed the content here. I hope you learned something. Hope it was at least somewhat neat to see a piece of ransomware executed on a system and what happens, and then again, how it can be remediated. And hopefully you can join me here in 2 weeks for the next webinar. So once again, appreciate you joining us, and thanks for coming.